Okay, so The Matrix Resurrections is directed by Lana Wachowski, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and a bunch of other actors that I do not know the names because I have not looked them up yet. But this movie was it was definitely definitely an interesting one to say something about it. And I was expecting quite a few things from this movie. I was kind of expecting like an updated like social commentary of like the Matrix and like how technology has taken over our lives since the first movie, like with social media and things like that, and how the idea of the Matrix could be closer to reality than it has ever been before, even though I strongly believe that there's no way something, even for the first movie, no way an idea like that could be plausible. I mean, you can't just jack an electric rod into the back of your brain and upload electricity and your mind just accepts that as reality. I mean, there's more to it than that. It's completely unnatural. But anyway, I was also expecting a lot of philosophy from this film, like the mental world versus objective reality, how exactly we know what objective reality is, and the difference between the mind and the world and things like that. But there was none of that in this movie. There was very, very, very little philosophy in this movie. I mean, like, the original Matrix had some pretty heavy philosophy in it, though there was only certain scenes that had it. I mean, there were some heavy scenes in the Matrix, but apart from the construct scene, the pill scene, and there is no spoon scene, that's basically most of the philosophy of that movie. But and there's philosophy in the second and third movie too, but there was like almost little to no philosophy in this movie. But there were a few interesting ideas. For one thing, the machines, the relationship, without spoiling too much, the relationship between the humans and the machines have changed a bit since the events of the original Matrix movies. A few characters make some reappearances, a few do not. But overall, if I really want to get into plot details, just look at my spoiler review. But is this movie worth watching? Yes, it is. Though it's nowhere near as good as the original Matrix. And I think even the sequels were better than this. Though this definitely had its strengths for sure. For one thing, the real world was a lot more well realised. The CGI background art for the real world, the power plants, the ruined cities, the machines, were a lot more detailed than in the original movies. Though the Sentinels, the Squiddies, looked pretty much the same. I mean, the 1999, 1998 CGI work for those squiddy things with the tentacles and the satellite things and the eyes were very well done for 1999, and I still think that holds up very well today. But the real world has just been given this massive makeover, this facelift. There are new places that they go to. Also, one thing that they did away was with the phones, that there are no more phones, that they don't communicate via phones. They don't use landline phones to get out of the Matrix. They use mirrors. They just jump through mirrors like in Mario to teleport from different places in the Matrix and to get in and out of the Matrix. So that's kind of a smart nod, because hardly anybody really uses payphones anymore, even though there are still heaps of payphones in my city. I'm not sure about yours, but they're still in mine. But definitely, we're not in 1999 anymore, so that's the point I'm trying to get across. Of course, if you're like a die-hard Matrix fan, I mean, like, even though there hasn't been a Matrix movie until now for over like 15 years now, it's definitely worth a watch. I wouldn't tell you to avoid this one, because it wasn't terrible, but it was kind of like in that uncanny valley between good and bad. There were good things about it, but there were a lot of things about the movie that also didn't work. There were a few cringy moments, there were a few jokes that not sure if they kind of landed the way that Lana probably would have expected them to. But there is an interesting story in this though. There is quite a bit of lore in this movie that kind of expands the Matrix universe, the world of the Matrix. So if you're into the lore, I would definitely consider seeing this movie. It has a lot of flaws, but it's definitely watchable. The action sequences I thought could have been a bit better. It was shot reasonably well, but the worst part of this movie was that there were moments where it did get really cheesy. There were certain moments, you know, when you like the frame rate is like massively slowed down and everything kind of looks like stop motion, and they're all jittering around when they're confused. When Neo is confused, they're jittering around like this really, really bad and corny looking stop motion look, and everything's blurry, and that didn't work. That was incredibly cheesy to put in the movie, and I don't really understand why Lana did that, but she did. And there were several confusing plot points. Maybe that was just me. There were certain messy parts of the movie, but the action, when people fight each other in this movie, it's not in the same kinetic way that it is in the original movies. It's a lot more people kind of, I know this is Matrix, but people, when they hit in their stomach, they float back really, in this really slow and artificial way. And I know it's the Matrix, it's supposed to be artificial, but I just didn't really buy that type of effect. It looked really, really off to me. But all those complaints aside, overall, it's a decent movie. You should watch it if you want to. I'm going to give it a 6.5 at the moment, but that's bound to change quite a bit because I'm going to have to see this movie a few more times. I mean, the original Matrix is still the best, and Reloaded had some really good action sequences. I don't remember Revolutions that much, but this movie, it could probably be on par with like Revolutions. It was very different. I found this movie to be quite a bit more interesting characters than what was in Revolutions. Don't really know how to fit it into the rest of the franchise yet, but it's a bit of an oddball, a bit of an oddity. But it was fun, so that's all I really have to say about it. It was a fun movie, and I never had the urge to walk out, so that's something. I've walked out of a few movies before. It didn't bore me to tears, or I didn't think it was horrendous, even though I did find some aspects of the movie to be a bit laughable. But that was my opinion. So what do you think of The Matrix Resurrections? Do you love it? Do you think it's trash, it's shit? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Whatever you think, definitely let me know in the comments below. That's my review, and as always, take care.